All right, well, we are back and live again. We had the show going for about 15, 20 minutes, and something was going on with the settings where it was set to private, but it was also public. So people had the link, they could watch it, but the comments weren't coming through to us. So we'll definitely get that going again, let some people come on in. So we'll have a part 1 and a part 2 to this show tonight. Pretty wild. So we were just talking about a couple things here. Q&A session tonight. Answer or ask anything that you want out in the chat bar. We will get to it. We will check it out. And we just got to wait for a few people to filter in here. So we'll get a couple banners pulled up and go from there. Yeah, I looked over at my phone and one of my buddies said, "Yeah, I thought you weren't too into the show tonight. You're not really responding to any of the comments." It's like, we can't see any comments. So
yeah, that'd be helpful on a Q&A show.
Yeah, so definitely.
Glad we got that figured out until we continued just talking to each other the whole night.
Yeah, I don't know what was going on there. I think I was playing around with some settings earlier in the week and must have turned it private so I could set everything up and never changed it back or something. But certainly if we missed your questions, go ahead and toss those in the comments bar and we will definitely get those answered for you. We got an open-ended show tonight, Q&A. Ask us what you want. We'll get to it.
I think, Dale, you were talking about before we got cut off your workout for the week. You're getting back in the pool doing some 500s.
Yeah. So I was doing some 500s, had about 30 minutes to go in my workout before I was coaching and just started getting to a rhythm. And it just started to feel like a swimmer again. It was pretty awesome.
Nice.
And there we go. Now we got some questions. We'll get to those in a second right after this. I really started to get into a rhythm and just started to feel like a swimmer again and just started descending them and descending them and descending them. I think I did 6 of them. By like number 3, I realized something was going on. It was like, I feel like a swimmer today. So I just kept cutting them down. It was like, can I meet this time? And I met it. Can I meet this time? And I met it. And I was like, there's no way I can go this fast. And I did it. Swam a 5:40 from a push. I was pretty impressed with it. There we go. We got it.
I haven't been in the pool in a while.
Yeah, it's been a while. It's been a while since I've seen anything like that. Those used to be like clockwork, but now it takes a bit of effort. Here, we've got a question here. How do you train your gut, especially during the hotter months? Well, that's definitely something that, I've been fortunate enough, and Rob's been out there with me. We were out in Hawaii watching Kona, and I don't know if you notice this because you don't really, kind of see everybody's best self when they're coming through town, but when you're out on the highway running with everybody, everything comes out. People are walking. It looks like a wasteland of bodies. And most of that just boils down to nutrition. People don't really take care of themselves or really prepare to be able to succeed throughout the race. So one thing we make sure we work with our athletes is training their gut. And what that means is training your body to handle all the fuel that it needs during the race. If you're racing an Ironman and it's going to take you anywhere from 9 to 17 hours, you're going to need a lot of fuel. And, some people go out there with 2 bottles strapped to their bike and they say, I'm good to go. I might grab some water here and there. And that's just not enough.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest issue is during training. And, a lot of people will, start to put together their nutrition plan, but they don't execute it during their training. And when they, compared to what they're taking in during training and what their body actually requires come Ironman day or whatever race it may be, if you're under fueling during your training, your body's not going to all of a sudden be able to handle that load when you put it in your system on race day. So the big thing is, practice the way you're going to race. So if you have a 5-hour ride, fuel like you're racing.
Yeah, every session. We tell people when you're in the pool, you feel the same. When you're on the bike, you feel the same. When you're running, you feel the same. A lot of people think they've got to do all their fueling on the bike, and then when they get to the run, it's done. Well, you're actually running with a higher heart rate than you were when you were on the bike, so you're burning more fuel. You need to keep fueling. And a lot of people say, well, I tried this one product, didn't like it. That doesn't work for me. But they tried it for a week or a couple days or just on race day, and they have GI distress. And of course you're going to. It takes a while to train your gut, which is what Courtney's talking about. You have to practice it day in, day out. You're just like you train yourself to be able to run further and ride further. Your gut gets used to that and it can handle it. And then you can put down a bottle of Gatorade Endurance like it's nothing every 20 minutes or 30 minutes. And I had one race where I was on the bike for 5.5 hours and I drank 24 bottles of Gatorade Endurance, and it still felt like I could have drank more. It was wild, but you just got to practice it. And when it's hotter out, you got to drink more usually because you're sweating more. Your sweat rates are through the roof. Living in Virginia, we get a lot of 90 and 100-degree days, so you become very heat adapted. And part of becoming heat adapted is sweating sooner. So, if it's 80 degrees out and normally you'd sweat 20 minutes into a ride or something, if it's 80 degrees out and you're heat adapted, you might be sweating 10 minutes in. So you just sweat sooner to prepare for that. So the fueling has to match all those losses that you're taking there.
I think one of the other things with the training it is a lot of people won't start taking in fuel until, maybe that hour mark, or they think they don't need it. As soon as you start your workout, I got on a schedule of, I kind of knew like every 10 minutes I'd be taking a sip of like my fuel of choice was Gatorade Endurance. I usually didn't take in gels. Maybe I'd take in one once an hour once I got things hammered down, but really relied on Gatorade Endurance because it pretty much had everything that I needed and, kept me full. But it was one of those things where it was like when I first started working with Dan of, start fueling at that 10-minute mark, because if you wait until you're thirsty or you've been going for half an hour, 40 minutes, you're already behind.
Absolutely. And a lot of triathlon in general, you're just set up to be behind. Depending on how long the swim takes, you can't fuel the swim. So you come out of the water, if it's been 30 minutes or an hour or 2.5 hours, maybe in an Ironman, you've just gone 2.5 hours without fueling or whatever that might be. So you've got to play catch up. In those really, really hot, long races that I've done, or our athletes do, it's not uncommon to put 5 bottles down in the first hour. That's right. 5 bottles. One of the key points that we use with people is you fuel aggressively as much as you can drink. You don't worry about your power. You don't worry about your heart rate. You worry about fueling until you have to pee.
And that's why I train that way, because you'll know what you can handle by that point. And if okay, I've been able to power down 5 bottles in that hour, then you can handle that. You don't want to tip the scales in the wrong direction, because once you do that, you're not going to recover. You're going to be getting sick and have that GI distress. I think on the flip side, from the hotter months, it's even more important in the cooler months, because especially being up in the Northeast, when it starts getting cooler, you may not want to drink as much, or you think, hey, I'm not sweating as much, I don't need to fuel. Well, that's kind of a misconception, is your body's still producing or still burning calories. You might not be feeling that sweat as much. It might be evaporating a little quicker, but you still got to start putting that in your system. So setting reminders of, okay, I need to drink now, or a timer on your watch to cue that fueling is definitely helpful.
There's a good comment from Margaret. She worked with us for a long time, and let me tell you, if you can't pee on the bike, it's an unbelievable and learn to pee on the bike. That's right. We got Circle Hook. He was our guest last week, stopping in. He's probably shaking his head at all the sugar stuff we're talking about. He had a very different approach, but he also had multi-day events where you can't just fuel on sugar for multi-day events. So he had to adapt to that as well. And let's see, he's got a comment here. That's something I didn't realize about a triathlon, and especially Ironman, that you're playing catch up when you get out of the water. And that kind of talks to what Rob was just saying. You get out of the water, and if you've ever been really rushed getting out of the pool, like I know no triathlete's ever been crunched for time, but I do this all the time. I swim, and I've got like 5 minutes to get out of the water, get in the locker room, and be in the car to get to work on time, and I'm just sweating in the car. You don't realize that when you're in the pool, but if you really get out of the water fast and start trying to get on with your day, you're still sweating for like 30 minutes, and you've been sweating all that time in the water.
I think that was one thing that I noticed from my college swimming days to training as a triathlete in the pool is I actually started fueling when I was in the pool versus, swimming 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 yards in a college practice and maybe drinking a couple sips of water. Definitely was a game changer when I started, taking in something during swim sessions, and I noticed, I felt a little better throughout the entire thing.
And it definitely makes you wish you could go start that college career over again, huh?
Yep.
Oh my goodness. We'd swim 3-hour practices and have maybe half a bottle of water. It was the dumbest thing ever.
Yeah. Things you learn as you go that you wish you could do back when you were training.
Right on, right on. Let's see, we got a couple of other comments here to catch up on. Margaret says, with working with chronic pain athletes, she started a new business where she does this. I'm interested in your philosophy for tracking athletes with injuries and or active pain. Absolutely. So tackling athletes with injuries and or active pain. If you if you watched our first show 20 minutes ago, we talked a little bit about that, where we really want to figure out where those injuries might be coming from. Is it something on the fueling side? Is it something on the health side? Is it something in the daily diet side? Or is it something from, is it your shoes, or is it your running form, or is it something like that? So just trying to tackle that as soon as possible and then kind of make a plan from there. We've got some great health care people in our system here that we'll probably see on a show at some point, some dietitians and whatnot. And if it's something above what we feel comfortable handling, we've got those great connections we send those off to. And that tends to help a lot. And Margaret, as well, is now a person that deals with people with these types of issues. So that's fantastic. And let's see. Yeah, if it's an injury from training, then that's something very easy to fix. It's usually biomechanical or something like that. And we were talking a little bit earlier about some of the services we offer with run form and things like that, swimming form. So a lot of that can be handled there. And if it's something bigger than that, then we escalate it if we need to.
Yeah, I think when it gets to some of that bigger stuff, if you go to PT and start working with a professional in that sense, it's something we can work with work with what your PT prescribes you, and try to balance that into the training. So you're rehabbing that injury, but able to keep up with what you can do. I think one example of that is, I think it was 2018. Is I got a stress fracture when I was training in my second metatarsal, and so Dan worked with what my doctor said I could do and couldn't do, and we put together a plan that obviously running was taken out, but I was still able to swim. Had to be careful pushing off the wall, but we were able to work with what I could do and until I was healed up and ready to go. But being able to do those things around that injury, I was able to, no pun intended, hit the ground running again once I was all healed up.
And you still had a great season that year too.
Yep.
Here's another one from Margaret. She says, nutrition speaking, personal preference on gels, solids, or liquids. You were talking about that a second ago, Rob.
So when I first started and was training for my first Ironman, I was wolfing down honey stinger waffles, and on top of, I think I was using Infinite at that time, and it was just one of those things where I felt full and felt like it was doing its job, but I wasn't digesting the honey stingers with how much I was eating, and then I wasn't drinking enough, so I was running into GI issues. And so that kind of started to lead me down the path of, how can I fix my nutrition? And, starting working with you, you recommended Gatorade Endurance. And I had never been a big believer in just liquid nutrition. It was one of those kind of fears of, well, am I going to be full? Like, am I going to feel like I have an empty stomach or everything's sloshing around? But after, probably took about a month of adapting to it, but after switching over to, I don't want to say strictly liquid fueling, but primarily liquid fueling, it became second nature. I was feeling better throughout workouts. I was definitely getting the right amount of calories. I was digesting most of it. It wasn't just sitting in my stomach and having a hard time digesting a solid. And so I think I started mixing in gels like every hour on top of the Gatorade Endurance to supplement. So mostly liquid with a little bit of gel, and I've steered clear from any like solids like the wafers or anything like that. It just doesn't work for me.
Yeah, and we don't necessarily have an affiliation with Gatorade Endurance. We do bring it up a lot, but like we said earlier in our first show that was supposed to be the beginning of this one, most of our athletes are doing Ironman branded 70.3 or full Ironman distance races, and that's the nutrition on course. So like we were saying earlier, you've got to be able to prepare for what you can handle. And there's no way that if you have some fuel that is not provided on course, you can carry enough. I promise you, if you think you're going through an Ironman or a half Ironman bike course and you can carry all your nutrition, you are not drinking enough. It's just not going to happen. I mean, you should be putting down a full bottle, a bike bottle, every 30 to 50 minutes. And if you're talking a half Ironman bike course, that's 4 or 5 bottles potentially, and even more if you're going to be out there longer. I've done half Ironman races where I put down 10 bottles. You got to drink a ton. And like Rob was saying, you get used to what your body can handle, and maybe the certain conditions you behave a little bit differently, but you start to learn how to supplement and kind of see what's coming and adapt from there. I know a couple of really hot races I've done, I could just kind of tell, some different things started happening. Like my vision started going, or my hands started to get numb, and that was just a big clue I needed more potassium. So I started to add more bananas in. But those are all things I'd practice on top of the fueling. And for those really, really hot races, like Courtney was talking about, you actually practice and train your gut to handle beyond what you expect to handle on the race. So if you've got to make those game time decisions, your gut can handle it and it's not going to turn on you. But of course, if you haven't done that over the past months, like Rob is saying, this is not a practice it the week before the race kind of thing. This is like, I'm racing in July, I'm starting to fuel now, and it's currently October for my whole training plan going through there, then it's just not going to work. And that's why so many people struggle. It's the longer you go, the more important that fuel is. Here's a good one. How do you determine when you need to skip a workout to recover, preventing getting sick versus just doing it and not being lazy?
So we have a pretty good philosophy that Dan has developed with Grn Mchn, and it's bend, don't break. I think it brings up a fine line of when to push through, when to step back. And I think that's one thing a lot of triathletes and endurance athletes struggle with is taking that step back, because there's that philosophy of, oh, well, I have this workout scheduled, I need to complete it. But if you're starting to notice signs of form breaking down, additional fatigue outside of what you're used to, little nagging aches or something during a run or ride, it might be time to assess and just shut it down for a workout. I think personally, it's just one of those things you have to learn on your own what your body can handle. But it's also, like I said, knowing that, hey, it's okay to take that step back. And I think that's the biggest thing that a lot of triathletes struggle to understand is a step back during a workout is probably for the best if it's necessary.
Yeah, if a lot of people think, I've got this TrainingPeaks plan, everything on the plan has to be green. If it's not green, I'm not doing my job. Well, if you're 100% compliant with your training plan, you're probably not listening to your body enough. Some of our best athletes, and by best, I mean ones that have come the furthest or made the most progress while working with us, are the ones that are very vocal and communicative with us. And they'll tell us, this is what I'm feeling. Is this something to be worried about? What should I do here? And they start to learn their body a lot more. When you're newer to the system, you rely a lot more on the coach. And one thing we like to do is kind of teach people what to expect and or expect, I guess, as well. And, if they're out on the race course, we can't be there with them. So they need to be able to make those decisions on their own at some point anyway. So, the longer they're with us, the more they start to say, like, we have athletes that have been with us for so many years at this point. They're like, just don't even look at that run. I had to shut it down. It's all good. I'll be back tomorrow or in 2 days or whatever. And those are some people that have qualified for Kona or Boston marathons and done really, really big things in the sport, or just chopped a ton of time off. The ones that really listen to their body and make smart decisions like that.
So I think with Grn Mchn, we train by heart rate. And one of the things that can kind of cue it, and what I slowly started to learn working with Dan, where he would point out is, hey, your power, while we don't focus on that on the bike, is kind of dropping compared to where it was, maybe a couple of weeks ago, or we're getting deeper into a build block and my power's lower at the same heart rate. That's one of the things that helped me learn that, all right, a couple rides in a row, I see my power's a little bit lower than what it normally is at that heart rate. And I decided, take a step back, take an extra day recovery and see what happens. And, those are little things like in the data, the coach can start to point out to help you as an athlete start to realize, if you're seeing this yourself, maybe it's time to take that step back.
Yeah, and a lot of that, once you're so accustomed to it, race day is really just the execution of it all. The way we train people, they are very prepared for their races as far as pacing goes and whatnot, and they know what things feel like and what adjustments need to be made. And our pacing plans just kind of help them dial that in and make good decisions on the day. How common are overuse injuries in triathlon as opposed to single discipline training? Is there a sort of balance with working with different muscle groups more often than not? Yeah, that's one thing that we do that we think is the most important and somewhat artistic parts of a coaching plan is something we call interplay. And that's kind of how all your workouts stack up together. We put a lot of thought into that. Rob and I sit down all the time and look at training blocks, and that's a good thing about having more people in your coaching network is you say, I've got this situation and let's bounce this idea back and forth, or, we'll take a block and kind of adapt it from there. And all those pieces are very carefully put in there. Being triathlon with, 3 different sports in there, it's good to pass the workload around a little bit. And one thing that really helps our athletes stay injury free is we put a lot of that more intense work on the bike as opposed to the run. And it just kind of translates over with a lot of transition runs and things like that. So kind of the way we set that all up sets people up for success and really limits their potential to get injured down the road. And we have a pretty good track record with keeping people pretty injury free, I believe.
I think, sometimes they're going to pop up. Like in my entire college career, from swimming to my triathlon career, I've had one stress fracture, and that was 3 years ago now. So I think, sometimes they pop up and there's no true rhyme or reason to it. It just happens. Might not necessarily be. Sorry, just lost my train of thought there.
Oh yeah, you're talking about the stress fracture.
Yeah, like that was one of those things that just my thought completely escaped me. I don't know what
It happens.
say.
That's all right. Let's see here. Let's move on to this one. It's pretty related. Compared to other big local triathlon teams who train and compete together, how do you keep a team dynamic up and spread, or all those spread across the country? Yeah, we do a lot of stuff where we try and do races together. Sometimes, when the world shut down, a lot of our athletes, we decided to do a race that wouldn't get canceled. So we did the Need for Speed 1 mile challenge where we all kind of trained towards the same goal on the same day. And that was a lot of fun. So
yeah, we threw a Facebook group together to keep each other motivated, weekly check-ins, daily check-ins. I think we were at that. I think we put together like a tracking Excel file for those who wanted to put in their times or what they were hitting on our milestone workouts, and just so we could keep each other motivated. It was definitely helpful to have that together. Even though we were distant, it was one of those things where you have that camaraderie spread across the country.
Yeah, and that's kind of the idea with this YouTube channel as well. While it's in its infancy, we already have some of our athletes and people we worked with before hanging out with us here, and it's just a good chance to sit down and talk and get some good stuff out on the table. But yeah, so while many of our athletes are not, even if they're training for the same race, we write custom plans for everybody. So they're most likely not going to have workouts that are all too similar. So even if you're in town with somebody and it's a Thursday, you probably don't have the same workouts, just the way we do things. We don't really believe in that big group philosophy as far as triathlon training goes. And first of all, not everybody's built the same or has the same physiological benefits. And people have different races, different experience levels, and most importantly, which has kind of come up in the background a lot tonight, different levels of durability. Some athletes can handle a bit more. Some people need to kind of really watch that line a bit more. So everything's kind of written to those athletes. And, we have those other means to kind of get together, and we do a lot of trainer parties over the winter where we kind of get together, and Zwift has made that really easy. And
I know Dan with the group that he works with down in Virginia, they try to meet up at a track and do a workout there where everybody's doing their own thing, but you're running past them multiple times while you're able to do the own thing. So you have that support of being out there, but you're able to focus on what you need to focus on.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just good to get your workout done while other people are around doing something hard, even if it's not the same thing. I remember one night we were out there, one person had a recovery run because they had raced the week prior. So they were just out there because they wanted to be with everybody, just cheering everybody on as they went. I was getting ready for, I believe, the Richmond Marathon. So I had some longer intervals for time, and other people were getting ready for the half. So they had some, zone 2 work or zone 3 work. And we're all out there having a good time and supporting each other. And when my intervals were off, I was cheering for people. And when I was running intervals, I had people cheering for me, and it was fun. And Margaret says, I already know the answer, but other people may not know. Circle hooks. There's full circle back to circle hook. Zwift parties are a lot of fun. If you remember our show from last week, Clint actually ran the first ultra marathon on Zwift. So I'm sure he had a lot of people to hang out with, kind of stopping in throughout the day on that. That's pretty impressive. Let's see here. I think we covered most things. If you have other questions, definitely throw them out in the chat for us. Yeah. And one thing that I wanted to come back to this comment for is kind of the tail end of it. You know, a lot of people think that if they're not doing the work that's on their schedule, they're being lazy, but sometimes it's the most beneficial thing, the thing that's going to get you further down the road, is just making the right decisions there. All right, here's Christine hanging out with us tonight. Thanks for joining us. She says, what is your onboarding process for new athletes like? Somewhat overwhelming sometimes.
Definitely.
But in a good way. We do things quite a bit different than a lot of people do. It's not just pay us your money and here's your plan. We do a lot of chatting back and forth. Our athletes have a lot of say in what's going on. This time of year,
questionnaire that we have them fill out.
Yep, starts with a questionnaire. We kind of get a better idea of who the athlete is, who it's going, and what they're looking for. Sometimes it's just not a good fit, and it's just good to establish that up front. But usually we can help people out with whatever they need, kind of figure out where they're going, what races they're looking at, and then we start season planning, putting a couple big races on the calendar, and we're doing that a lot with athletes right now. People that are getting close to the end of their season or have just recently ended their season, looking ahead to next year as the races start opening up for registration, putting 2 or 3 really big key races on the calendar, and most importantly, making sure they're spread out far enough. You know, you don't want to pick a really big race in June and then have another one in July or August. You want to kind of spread them out a little bit more and make sure you've got time to recover, train a little bit more, get back into it, so you can have a really successful season. We've got an entire document for our members only that has a lot of articles that we've written, different ways to navigate the TrainingPeaks and kind of how we deal with data. We do a lot of really specific lap splits taking. So a lot of people, that's a learning curve for them. If they haven't taken lap splits in the pool or really specific ways on the bike or run. I know when you get your Garmin watch, those things are usually set up with like a 1 mile auto lap on the run and then, you know, every 5 miles on the bike, which is not really super telling. So usually our workouts all have goals and we want those lapped out a certain way. So just lots of learning like that. And then we just kind of kick things off from there. We write our training plans 1 block at a time. So we kind of see how the block went. That's about 3 to 5 weeks if you've never done training blocks like that before. And then kind of adjust and move on from there. So hopefully that answered your question. If not, just shoot us another chat if you have more questions about it. Ooh, there we go. Margaret signed up for a race. I signed up for a 10K. It's my first race since May of this year. I think I'm excited, or I think I'm excited. Punctuation is important. That's awesome. When's that 5K or 10K going to be? Is that the Monument Ave? There's a really big 10K around here. It's got like almost 40,000 people in it. There's so many people that they have to do waves. I remember the first year I did it, I got to the starting line. I wasn't even the first wave because there's an elite wave first. Did that, ran the entire race, hung out at the finish line, jogged back to my apartment, which was like 3 miles away. And then there were people still on the starting line for their wave. It went on all day long.
That's pretty cool.
I was actually in my apartment on the trainer watching people running by while I was back home already doing my other workout for the day. It was pretty wild. Circle Hook says, that's awesome, Margaret. There's a little bit more camaraderie. Maybe we'll even get Circle Hook running again. He's talked about it. That's awesome. Okay, so that one's a little bit more specific to our coaching services. We have a whole bunch of different levels. We have a bronze level, a silver level, and a gold level. And depending on, you know, what kind of feedback you're looking for is pretty much what determines that. Every level is going to get a custom plan. And then if you're a person who wants a little bit of feedback but can still kind of handle a lot on your own, we have probably our most popular level at the silver. It's kind of like the Goldilocks. Or if you're somebody who really wants to make sure they're doing everything right, they've got the gold level. Or if you're somebody that's been with us for a while and you want the training plan and just a little bit of checking in here and there, we've got the bronze level. So those are all different, and they're not fixed. If you want, a lot of athletes come in and they do the gold level for a couple months so they can really make sure everything's working well for them. And then once they got everything under wraps, they kind of step back a little bit to the silver, and vice versa. Some people come in at silver because that works best with their budget, and they either stay there all year, or if they have a race coming up, their last couple months leading up to the race, they might bump it up to the gold and really make sure they're getting all their questions answered. Very briefly about that, if you're a gold level athlete, you're pretty much getting feedback multiple times a week on every workout that you do. Silver level is more of like a weekly wrap up. And then the bronze level is going to be more of kind of like at the end of each training block, we kind of talk a little bit about how things went. But at that level, you're not really getting workout review. So it's basically coach involvement that changes those levels. Do you have anything to add to that, Rob?
No, I think you pretty much hit the nail on the head, covered it completely.
Yeah, and our website has a lot of that information on there as well. Those levels apply to single sport or multi-sport, depending on what you're looking to do.
Yeah, just to maybe elaborate on that a little bit more. A lot of what we do with the communication is through TrainingPeaks, athlete comments. If you're familiar with that platform, there's a spot there after a workout, before a workout, athlete can post their notes or how they felt. But I think that's one of the biggest things as a coach is getting the proper feedback, because I can sit there and look at the data all day, but if I don't know how you felt during that workout, I'm not going to be able to interpret it like to its fullest. So having that athlete feedback so I can interpret a workout and help you progress is beneficial.
And we've got an entire article in our members lounge about just that topic alone. It's like if all you're leaving us with is the data from your Garmin watch, it's almost like trying to paint the Mona Lisa with only green. It's like I kind of know what's going on, but I could use some more help here. Having that athlete feedback on the side, something more than this went great. Like, we're glad it went great, but tell us some more. That doesn't really tell us anything. What went great? How'd your feeling go? So in a lot of we have some, for our silver and our gold level athletes, we have an end of week reflection. That's almost like a workout built in there, but it's a notes section. And we've got a lot of prompting questions in there. Do you feel any nagging injuries? What's your feeling been like? How's your sleep? What's your stress level like? So a lot of just jump off points to get some conversation started there. And then we kind of take things from there, however they need to go. And if you're a bronze level athlete, that's more of like a once a month type of thing. And we don't get into quite as many specifics. That just has a little bit less coach involvement there. That's our lowest level there. And we personally don't even like that level, just because we like to get involved with the athletes and help out as much as possible. That's what we're here for, to try and help people learn. Margaret says, been running with Courtney a lot lately. Got to put that training to use. There you go. Oh, I missed a couple of things here. My wife signed up for the Houston Half, her first race since 2017 or 18. It's been a very long time for both of us. You might have to join her there. When's that race going to happen, Clint? I think they met in the ultra endurance running world. He was talking about that last week. Here's a little bit from Margaret. She says, I'm a veteran with them, but I love feedback and accountability. Very specific to the athlete and what you need from your coach. Yep. Yeah, Margaret's been with us a long time. Cool. We are almost coming up on the hour mark here, even though this show's only been going for 35 minutes. We did have that first part where we couldn't see any comments for whatever reason. We'll have to go look into that, but definitely get those comments out there if you have any questions. Like we said, we'll do this about once a month, the Q&A type thing, where we just kind of have an open floor discussion about what's going on and connect with some people and answer anything that you have.
Yeah, definitely. Along with those questions that got sent in, if we touched on something that you want covered more in depth, like I think Dan and I have talked about how we want to put on a show about season planning, go a little bit more in depth to that. There's some other topics that you want to see, let us know, because as we've said, we want to tailor this to what you want.
Yeah, definitely. And if we didn't cover something in here, leave it in the comment section in the video, or shoot us an email, Facebook, Instagram. We have got that questionnaire form at the bottom of our coaching website. Let us know. This is not just a place to come here and kind of talk about our coaching business. Shows like tonight are just to talk about whatever you want to talk about, and kind of how it's how we've experienced that working with different people. Cool. Well, I think we are just going to shut it down here pretty soon. We'll give people another couple seconds if they have any more questions, but it's been fun hanging out.
Yeah.
Technology was a little interesting tonight. We'll get that sorted for the future. That won't be an issue. This is not my first live stream. I do a ton of them on my other channel. I just don't know what's going on with that. That was wild. I'll be talking to Circle Hook Productions. He's got the circle hooks for fishing and the productions because he's a tech guru. And we'll see what's up there. Maybe that's what my mom was calling me about last show. All right. Well, I'm not seeing any other questions. You got anything else for us tonight, Rob? Are you ready to shut this down?
Let's shut it down, and we'll get the word out for our next show and get a post going for that.
Yeah, so Rob already talked about it a little bit. Our next show is most likely going to be about season planning. That fits pretty well with the schedule right now. Most people are shutting down their season for the year or already have, and they're starting to look ahead at 2022. Yeah, that's where we are. I'm losing track of my years now.
Yeah.
2022 is coming up, and races are on the schedule. And Margaret's got one. I've got one. Clint's probably going to have one if his wife talks him into it. And we got to start getting ready for that. Some of us more than others. Definitely check that out when we get that up here. We will promote it, and hopefully we'll see you in the chat asking questions there too.
All right. Well, thanks for hanging out with us, everyone.
Absolutely right. You ready to do this high five thing? We've been working on that. It's all reversed for us. It's wild, but we'll see everybody next show. Take it easy.